Millionaire turns down all, then sees a humble cleaner and reveals, "I want you to be my wife." Jake Matthews stared out over the sprawling skyline of New York City from his penthouse, the weight of his polished life heavy on his shoulders. As a self-made millionaire and corporate lawyer, he had ticked all the boxes. The sleek sports car, the countless designer parties, an inherited fortune and connections. But behind the edifice of success lay an unsettling emptiness. Laughter felt hollow, genuine warmth replaced by superficiality. The emptiness gnawed at him, an unwanted guest in his grand, luxurious life. In the break room of his law firm, an unexpected encounter shook his world. Maria, a determined cleaner, scrubbed the floor with an intensity that caught his eye. She was nothing like the dazzling elites he mingled with, her hands worn from years of fighting against life's adversities as a single mother. Over stolen moments of coffee breaks, they exchanged shared laughter and stories, forming an unexpected friendship. In her, Jake saw resilience, purpose, something real to hold on to. With each passing day, the painful realization dawned. He had buried the feelings that craved more than wealth and status. But just as he found solace, corporate pressures mounted. His powerful superiors pushed for a merger that would crush his last ties to integrity. Torn between loyalty to his firm and the genuine connection he felt towards Maria, Jake's internal conflict intensified. What did it mean to thrive in a world that valued profit over all else? As he balanced his black tie life against Maria's grounded existence, doubt twisted his gut. Was he still capable of making authentic choices, or had ambition forged a prison around his heart? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The extravagant charity gala loomed, a dazzling trap designed to keep him tethered to his wealth. Yet he felt like a ghost among the opulence. The polished smiles and hollow conversations crushed in on him until they became a suffocating weight, leaving him desperate to escape. And then he saw her. Maria entered, a beacon of light in a sea of empty silhouettes. Her presence sparked something deep within him, something that simultaneously frightened and exhilarated him. In a moment of raw vulnerability, Jake's heart raced. Unconsciously, he took the stage. The crowd's eyes bore down on him. "I want you to be my wife," he shouted, vulnerability wrestling with panic. Gasps filled the air. Privacy shattered. Would he truly sacrifice a life of privilege for authenticity? As Maria froze, shock etched in her features, he questioned every carefully cultivated decision he had made. And just like that, the fragile illusion of control shattered around him, the path ahead murky and uncertain. Would he plunge into a world of real connection, or find himself completely isolated, marooned on the edges of everything he had once desired? Jake's heart pounded in his chest, echoing the gasps that rippled through the crowd. Instantly, a brooding silence enveloped him as he faced the electric mix of disbelief and curiosity radiating from the guests. Yet all he could focus on was Maria. Her wide eyes pierced through the noise, searching for something he hadn't yet found within himself. He stepped down from the stage, a whirlwind of emotions swirling. Fury and clarity battled inside him. What had he just done? But more importantly, what had led him to that moment of reckless honesty? The sharp disconnect between his privileged life and the raw truth he had glimpsed with Maria turned into a visceral sensation in his stomach. The room buzzed with gossip and speculation. They speculated about the millionaire who dared to speak his heart for a humble cleaner. Jake shut them out, repositioning his gaze toward Maria. And then he felt it. a surge of determination. If this was truly going to be different, if he wanted to pursue genuine connection over superficial success, he needed to take ownership of his choices. Maria appeared both frightened and composed, uncertainty clouding her expression as she processed his impulsive declaration. He approached her slowly, aware of every pair of eyes glued to them. "Maria, Jake," she interrupted, her voice threaded with disbelief. "You can't just say something like that and expect it to mean anything." Her words cut deeper than the initial isolation he felt back in the gala. He had dismissed the weight of his wealth, but her honest hesitation reflected the depth of the rift between their worlds. "I know it sounds crazy, but it's not just about a proposal. I want to change my life. I want to embrace what matters." She hesitated, glancing around the extravagant space that had become a prison of expectations for him. "And this life? This world you live in? You think it's easy for me to step into that?" He sensed the walls she had put up, the strength lacing her skepticism. Suddenly, it wasn't just about him. It was about the future they could forge together, amidst the towering obstacles his status presented. "I'll tackle it, whatever we need to face. I refuse to let wealth dictate my happiness." Maria's eyes softened as she absorbed his sincerity. "It's not that simple. I can't be part of a world where everything is balanced on privilege. My son, he needs stability. Do you even understand what that means?" A shadow of fear flickered across her face. As her words hung in the air, Jake confronted the reality of her situation. Everything he had taken for granted in his luxurious life felt small in the light of her struggles. This wasn't just a romantic endeavor. It was a commitment to change both their worlds, to build a difficult bridge from privilege to humility, once they figured out how to confront the repercussions. The crowd around them faded to a blur. Jake's mind raced with unappealing truths about his reality, the nature of his corporate world, the pressures that bought silence over authenticity. "We'll find a way through this," he promised, more to himself than to her. "I'll confront my past, the firm, everything." But doubt clawed at him. Was it really possible to turn his back on the pinnacle of success for a love that felt more like a reckless gamble? The question loomed like a specter, haunting him with uncertainty. "Meet me tomorrow," he finally insisted. "We need to discuss what this can mean for us, for your son. There are too many questions left unanswered." As they exchanged a long, searching look, the stakes mounted. The potential for a beautiful, terrifying connection hung heavy on the horizon. Emily's skepticism began to melt beneath the weight of their reality. But the journey ahead would demand courage from both of them. One way or another, the moment of truth had arrived. Would Jake step into a life that accepted love over status, vulnerability over power? Would he face the shadows of his wealth? Or would he retreat back into the comfort of his penthouse isolation? In the morning, he would need to confront the full extent of his choices, and what it meant to truly put someone else's needs above his own. Little did he know that a deeper revelation awaited him, one that would threaten to reshape everything he believed about himself. As he prepared for the tumultuous conversation that awaited him with Maria, he couldn't shake the feeling that the unfolding days would push him into an irrevocable transformation. Would he discover the depth of his own resilience or find himself trapped once again in the elegant trappings of a world he no longer wanted to be a part of? Jake awoke to the pale light of dawn seeping through the expansive windows of his penthouse, its sterile brightness contrasting sharply with the chaos swirling in his mind. He lay motionless, thoughts racing, dissecting the decision he had so impulsively made. The announcement at the gala had felt exhilarating. Not just a declaration of feelings, but a radical proclamation against a life curated by superficial expectations. Yet that exhilaration was now clouded by fear and uncertainty. He glanced at the clock, stubbornly counting down the minutes until his meeting with Maria. Each tick, only heightened the tension coiling within him. How had he let himself become the spectacle of disapproval? The rich man, in love with the lower class. If the world was watching, the stakes had never felt higher. He had to confront not just her apprehensions, but also the societal pressures that dictated so much of their respective paths. Eventually, the need for action propelled him from the bed. He couldn't preserve the outrageous bravery reflected at the gala through merely leaning on the illusion of a romantic escape. Did he truly believe that he could bridge the visible chasm between them? The machines he had so meticulously mastered in his corporate life felt strikingly mechanical in comparison to what he faced now, this unreciprocated vulnerability. As he made coffee, memories from his early days as a young executive surfaced, when he'd sought to prove himself through endless hours at the office. Back then, financial success equated happiness. Now, standing at that precipice, he questioned everything. His world had provided comfort, but at the grave expense of connection. Could he dismantle that world? More importantly, was he capable of redirecting his own life toward meaningful sacrifice for another? The thought of Maria, her fierce independence, the way she bravely faced the world alone, rippled within him. There was a strength in her vulnerability, a spirit unyielded by her circumstances. He recalled her words, the gravity of her responsibilities. Stability for her son weighed heavily on her shoulders, a burden he knew he couldn't simply erase with grand gestures. He dressed quickly, his usual well-tailored suit feeling less like armor and more like a noose. Jake needed to shed this identity, at least for today. Each thread of fabric saturated with privilege reminded him of the responsibility he had ignited in that instant of reckless honesty. As he arrived at the cafe where they had agreed to meet, the familiar buzz of coffee machines and chatter felt alien, as if they unveiled the world he had chosen to step back from. He chose a table near the window, a vantage point to gather his thoughts before her arrival. The air felt charged with anticipation, and the gleam of sunlight warped like his perception of reality. Time stretched painfully until he caught a glimpse of her. Maria approached, her expression artful in its steadiness. There was something ethereal about her, like a beacon in turbulent waters. "Jake," she greeted cautiously, tension flickering in her eyes. "Thank you for coming," he replied, gauging her reaction. Would she understand the magnitude of his intentions, or would his privilege whisper too loudly between them? "Thought about what you said. A lot," she began, hesitating. "I want to believe you. I really do. But I need to know if you understand what you're asking." He leaned forward, his heart racing. "I know it's colossal. I'm not here to minimize your life or your struggles. I truly want to understand you, Maria, and what we face. If we're to make this work, it has to be on your terms." Her eyes narrowed slightly as she absorbed his words. He could see her deliberation, a rapid dance between hope and skepticism. There, behind her guarded exterior, he sensed a flicker of possibility. "The road won't be easy, Jake. It's not just about feelings. It's a lifestyle, a sacrifice." "Then let it be a sacrifice for love," he countered, surprised by the fervor in his own voice. Would he be able to embrace the discomfort of change, as Maria demanded? As the conversation unfolded, Jake felt the walls of uncertainty crumble. But what lay ahead wasn't merely about declaring intentions. It was about decisively choosing to live that truth. The deeper he ventured into this labyrinth of emotions, the more he recognized his own fears. Would he dare take another leap, truly stepping away from the throne of privilege to embrace the raw reality of love? Maria watched him, and for the first time, he caught a fragment of faith in her gaze. Yet the challenges loomed larger than ever. Intimidating specters of the unknown clung to them. The true confrontation was still at hand. Jake could feel it breathing heavily in the room, the question of sacrifice echoing like thunder. Just then, a message pinged on his phone, and as he glanced down, his heart sank. The name on the screen, a message from his firm, threatened the fragile foundation he was trying to build with Maria. "Are you ready to face everything that comes next?" he thought, gripping the table until his knuckles turned white, realizing he had yet to answer that pivotal question. Jake stared blankly at his phone. The message from his firm felt like an anchor dragging him back to the familiar depths of corporate life. A mere line of text evoking immediate dread, reminding him of the financial meetings that buzzed around him like a swarm of angry bees, the monthly reports, profit margins, and negotiation tactics that had long since defined his existence. Today, though, those concerns felt alien to him, eclipsed by the enormity of his commitment to Maria. "Are you going to answer that?" Maria's voice broke through his spiral of thoughts, a subtle challenge wrapped in curiosity. Her expression remained unswerving, a mixture of expectation and caution. "It's work," Jake replied, waving his hand dismissively, as if the gesture could brush away the mounting pressure. "Does it matter?" she probed, with a raised eyebrow, unearthing his hesitation. "You're at a crossroads, Jake. I need to know what path you truly want to take." He met her gaze, the intensity of her presence grounding him, forcing him to confront the truth that snagged at his consciousness. "I am choosing this," he said, voice steadier than he felt inside. "I want to understand your world. I want to build something real with you." But even as he spoke the words, the stench of doubt rumbled beneath the surface. Maria leaned back, crossing her arms, the fluidity in her body congealing with uncertainty. "You say that now, but can you really step away from what you've built? Leaving all of that behind isn't just a switch you can flip, Jake." As he remained silent, the question of whether he could truly dismantle the identity forged over years pressed heavily on his psyche. He had worn his ambition like armor. Would embracing this new reality feel like donning a cloak of vulnerability instead? The cafe buzzed around them, laughter and chatter creating a stark contrast to the gravity of their conversation. He couldn't help but envy the ease with which they floated through lives that seemed simple and uncomplicated. Maria had navigated hardship, strength evident in every cautious movement, every word. "Let's say I want to make this work," Jake ventured, an idea sparking in his mind. "I'll take a leave of absence, maybe even step down from my position. I can devote time to understanding your world, experience it firsthand." Maria's eyes flashed with a mixture of surprise and skepticism. "That's a huge leap. You're saying you'd give up everything, just like that?" "Everything?" "Yes, possibly," he began, but he felt a familiar pang of reluctance creeping in. "It might be a small sacrifice to know you." "And what happens when the glamour fades and hard realities set in?" she asked, her voice steady but laden with concern. "You may find yourself without a safety net, dealing with struggles you've never even seen." "Then I'll adapt," he said, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. "This isn't just about me anymore. It's about us. I can learn. I want to fight for this." "Can you fight when you're not used to the battleground? Can you bear the fatigue, the constant strain?" Her question hung in the air, a mirror reflecting the doubts he couldn't yet articulate. He took a deep breath, flooding his mind with memories of his climb through the corporate world. Nights packed with numbers, deadlines, faceless interactions devoid of warmth. The urge to escape that world tugged fiercely at him now. Would he be able to relinquish the comforts of his privilege for a chance at authenticity? Silence enveloped their table, and the weight of Maria's gaze bore into him, unflinching. Suddenly, the glimmer of a plan was born in him, a way to gain first-hand experience of her life. "I'll come to your work," he asserted, almost impulsively. "I'll spend a day with you, see the challenges you face. Let me feel what you endure." Maria laughed, a sound layered with disbelief, yet sprinkled with something softer. "You think a day will teach you how to live like me? It's not a simple equation. Maybe not, but it's where I can start. You'll see I'm committed, willing to learn. I want to understand not just the beauty you have, but the burdens as well. As she studied him, perhaps assessing the merits of his determination, perhaps still lingering on a thread of doubt. It won't be an easy transition. Expect the unexpected. How could I not? He replied, genuine. That's where my real growth will begin. As they continued to talk, Jake felt an energy shift, igniting the resolve he had been digging for. He envisioned stepping into her world with thoughtfulness and determination, allowing their narrative to emerge as a joint venture rather than a desperate act. But even as possibilities thrummed in his veins, anxiety intermingled with anticipation. The undercurrents of his past life had not yet dissipated. Challenges loomed like shadows, and he knew true confrontation awaited. The reality of what he had just proposed hung palpably between them. Just then, the phone buzzed again. An urgent call from work. He caught Maria's eye and knew she was aware of the gravity it carried, of the contradiction it posed to his newfound commitment. The future loomed, inspiring confidence and breeding fear. Would he answer, or would he ignore the call for the first time in years? Jake inhaled deeply, the air thick with impending revelations. Would he abandon old ties for new beginnings, risking everything he knew for a chance to chase authenticity? Sometimes, he thought, the hardest battles lie not within others, but within ourselves. And yet, he could feel the notion surge stronger than ever. He was ready to face whatever awaited him on the other side. Jake's heart raced at the buzzing sensation of his phone. He could sense Maria's anticipation, the tension between them pulling taut. Each vibration was a pulse of uncertainty, and in that moment, it felt like the contract binding him to his old life was about to snap. He glanced at the screen again, the familiar name sending chills down his spine. Yet, within the anxiety lurked an unmistakable spark of clarity. This was the moment he had envisioned, the symbolic break from the person he had been, the corporate Jake who had surrendered his dreams for a suit and a title. He knew the choice that lay before him, and took a deep breath. "Look," he said, forcing the words out with a confidence he didn't fully feel. "I'm not going to answer that. I want to pursue what we just talked about." Maria's eyes widened, a mixture of surprise and delight washing over her expression. "You realize that means stepping into the unknown, right? You're trading a life of familiarity for one filled with uncertainty," she replied, both hesitant and supportive. "Exactly," he deflected, relishing his growing conviction. "I want to feel the weight of that uncertainty. I'm not asking you to hand me your world on a silver platter. I'm asking to share the load." Yet as he spoke, his mind was flooded with images of his corporate life. Successful deal closures, the praise from colleagues, the expenditure reports that always seemed to make the stakes feel worth it. How would he cope when those days were behind him? Would you really be okay without your safety net, your routine? Maria's words rattled through him with an intensity he hadn't anticipated. "Are you ready to possibly struggle in ways you've never experienced? To learn the harsh realities that come with it?" "I want to try," he declared, bolstered by an electricity coursing through him. The fight was to not just survive, but thrive amid the chaos, and he yearned to be a part of something more meaningful. But his mind, relentless as it was, stirred doubts that crept into the edges of his resolve. What if you find it's not what you expect? What if the hard truths frustrate you? Her brows knit together, a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Then I'll confront those frustrations," Jake assured. "I've spent years problem-solving in the boardroom. How different can this be?" Maria's mirthless chuckle rang through the cafe. "It's life, not just a balance sheet. You'll discover layers of emotion, pain, real human experiences. It's not just about numbers or graphs anymore. Can you empathize with that struggle? Can you offer a genuine presence when faced with the burdens of others?" His thoughts spun around her words like a whirlwind. What if? He echoed internally, allowing the question to marinate in his mind. He could understand power dynamics and profit margins, but did he have the capacity to not only endure, but to rise alongside others? It struck him then. This was about skill sets born from experience, not just knowledge he had acquired through books or presentations. I'll need to be patient, and that starts today, he said, clutching the resolve that was building within him like he was clutching a lifeline. The excitement began to illuminate his inner landscape, battling against the shades of doubt. Let's do this. I'm committed, he affirmed, a steady gaze anchored on Maria. She was the embodiment of everything he longed for: authenticity, resilience, vibrancy. Just as he felt the tether to his old life begin to loosen, the cafe door swung open, a gust of wind accompanied by a swirling cloud of dust. A cleaner walked in, pushing a cart loaded with supplies. The mundane sight momentarily distracted Jake, in contrast to the depth of their conversation. The woman was straightforward, clad in worn clothes, seemingly intent on her task. His heart caught. Wasn't this the daily reality that he now craved? Look at her, Jake said, nodding toward the path of the cleaner. She's in the thick of it, doing what needs to be done. She'd understand the struggle far more than I ever have. He was struck by the truth of it, the rawness of her existence. Maria turned her gaze toward the woman. You really want to connect with that? Learning from her life can be your wake-up call. Jake nodded slowly, his mind racing. But what if I can't handle that? What if the workload crushes me? Then you pick yourself up, learn from the experience and push forward, Maria replied, her voice ringing steady with encouragement. Jake took a moment, recognizing that the leap he was proposing would no longer simply involve exploring Maria's life. It would mean embracing the world beyond his safe confines, an endeavor requiring more than just observation. This realization sent chills down his spine, igniting an exhilarating fear within him. But as he prepared himself to step into this new reality, the phone buzzed again. Could he ignore it once more? The thoughts catapulted in a frenzy. One choice could ground him deeper into the corporate chaos. The other offered a tantalizing glimpse of a lifestyle where connections mattered more than mere spreadsheets. In that moment of indecision, he faced an alarming revelation about his current self. To confront what truly lay ahead, he would first have to confront the strongest opponent, his own fear of vulnerability. The crossroads of his previous life and the potential of a new chapter shimmered before him, forever marked by choices that would shape his identity. What awaited on the other side? Would he find the courage to embrace the unknown fully, or falter back into the grasp of familiarity? The phone buzzed once more, but this time it felt like a challenge, tugging at the very threads he sought to unravel. Jake drew a deep breath, preparing to make an uncharted choice, his fingers hovering over the screen. The real test had only just begun, and with every moment, he felt the tantalizing pull of transformative potential surrounding him. Jake's thumb hovered hesitantly over the glowing screen of his phone, the persistent buzz pulling him between two lives. The hypnotic humming echoed the pounding of his heart and challenged the newly crafted resolve that simmered within him. He had come so far, yet this pivotal moment seemed more than just a decision about a phone call. It was a litmus test of his courage to embrace a life of authenticity. Are you ready to face what that phone call represents? He asked himself, though no answer came. His gaze shifted back to the cleaner diligently stocking shelves. As her hands moved with practiced ease, Jake felt the resonance of her existence beneath the surface of his own turmoil. She belonged to a world he wanted to understand, where real struggle birthed genuine resilience. Why am I hesitating? He mused. The implications sank in. Every hesitation made him question the strength of his resolve. The corporate ladder had always seemed a safe space, an illusion he built walls around. But now, it felt like a cage. Why chase success at the cost of succumbing to fear? "Let's explore," he whispered, gathering his newfound determination. No financial reports or corporate rankings mattered anymore. He craved the kind of experience that stretched beyond measures of profit, a deep connection that transcended spreadsheets. It was more than sense. It was palpable. But as he eased himself back from the brink of decision, the internal dialogue turned critical. What if he wasn't equipped to manage the emotions he now wished to understand? The fractures in his confidence threatened to return. He had spent years hiding behind data and deliverables, analyzing trends while ignoring the people whose stories were behind them. What if he found that emotional labor was a burden too heavy for him to carry? He watched the cleaner again, her focus unwavering despite the mundane task. Perhaps she held wisdom he had always overlooked in the corporate world. What if her quiet strength was a mirror reflecting back his own fears? "Jake," snapped Maria, startling him. He met her eyes, the concern etched in her brow reminding him of the stakes. "This is your moment. Don't step back." "Right," he said through clenched teeth. He forced the doubt from his mind and straightened his posture, his body priming itself to stand against the waves of uncertainty crashing down. "It's time to break the silence." With a sudden rush of adrenaline, he swiped the screen to answer the call, then immediately hesitated as realization set in. The voice on the other end belonged to the boss he had aimed to leave behind. Would he even recognize the man who used to measure his worth based on bonuses and accolades? "Jake, where the hell have you been? We need you back. There's potential for a promotion and—" All at once, grappling with the prospect of returning to the familiar, sunk his heart. His voice emerged steady, yet transformative in its declaration. "I'm not coming back." The words hung in the air like a fierce challenge, powerful and liberating. "I'm pursuing something real." Real! It was laced with disbelief, the sharp tone yanking Jake back to a world he yearned to escape. "Jake, you must be joking. You could have everything back in just one meeting." His heart raced, yet beneath the bitter return of self-doubt emerged a flame he never anticipated. Resolve. "You don't understand. I'm done chasing empty victories." He ended the call, breathless. There was no going back now. The pulse within him heightened, tethering him to an exhilaration unknown to his corporate self. "Are you okay?" Maria's gentle voice cut through his whirlwind. "More than okay," he replied, the buoyancy from his conviction rising. "I just took a step away from everything I once held dear, but it felt right." Maria smiled, the walls around her perception of Jake shrinking as she stepped closer. "What's next for you, then? Are you ready for the layers of struggle?" Jake embraced the gravity of her question, feeling the weight transform into motivation. "It means finding connection," he replied, his thoughts racing forward. "It means confronting my fears, those burdens tied to vulnerability, because what waits ahead might be the key to understanding life outside my delusions." As a quiet moment settled between them, the realization sparked within him. The next step wouldn't simply involve action. It required resilience. A plan had to form, a path emerging from the ashes of his former existence. He felt adrenaline surge, excitement weaving through his veins. "Let's find that truth together," Jake said finally, filled with a burning desire to grow. Just then, as if the universe conspired for him to remain grounded in reality, the cleaner approached. She paused in front of them, her eyes fixed on Jake. "You seem lost. Can I offer some insight?" The invitation hung in the air, charged with potential. Jake hadn't expected to be sought. This supposed expert from the corporate world, now standing on the brink of something profound, had the chance to glean wisdom from someone who had faced and triumphed over daily struggles. As he contemplated the next moment of truth, he sensed the challenge confronting him anew. Would the cleaner's insight unlock another layer of himself that was ready to emerge? In that instant, Jake understood. His journey had barely begun. Jake's heart raced as he met the cleaner's gaze, the weight of her words settling over him like a cloak. "Can I offer some insight?" Her voice was steady, devoid of pretense. She stood there, an unassuming figure, yet in that moment, it felt as if a personal connection unfurled between them, hinting at shared struggles and desires. "Yeah, I wanted to redirect my life, but I have no idea where to start," he admitted, vulnerability spilling out unfiltered. The admission was both liberating and terrifying. He was unaccustomed to being raw and honest, instead, cloaked in professional masks his entire life. The woman smiled softly, her fingers carefully twisting a small cloth she had held. "Sometimes people think changing their lives requires a grand plan, but it often starts with a small step." Jake's mind whirled. Small steps. It sounded deceptively simple yet profound. "What was yours?" he asked, leaning forward as if inquiring about a well-guarded secret. "I used to be like you," she said, her voice rich with experience, "chasing after things that didn't fulfill me. I realized one day that focusing on my passions, helping people, stitching life back together in my own way, made me feel whole." He took a moment to absorb her words. The mundane act of cleaning, a job he had overlooked as nothing more than a necessity, had become her avenue for purpose. Behind her simplicity was a depth he could only aspire to understand. What did it look like to chase not profits, but connection? "Do you think I can do it?" he found himself questioning. The challenge loomed large in his mind. The fears he had battled just minutes earlier surged back, knocking against the door of his new resolve. "Only you can gather the courage to find out," she said, her voice steady, yet uplifting. "But first, you need to uncover what truly matters to you, what speaks to your soul." Jake felt a shudder of realization rumble within him. This wasn't about abandoning who he was, but rediscovering the parts of himself he had long buried. "How do I uncover that?" "By engaging with the world around you, being open to new experiences." She pointed toward the bustling street outside. "To nurture connections beyond your comfort zone. Each interaction holds a lesson. It's about observing and feeling." "Empowered," he asked, "would you maybe spend time with you?" she interrupted, looking amused and serious at once. "I'd be happy to, but it will be a journey of exploration, not a comfort tour." Jake nodded vigorously, his heart pounding with newfound purpose. "What's next then?" "Follow me," she said simply. "Let's take a walk." As they stepped outside, the warm sun kissed his skin. The streets, filled with bustling energy, pulsed around him. For the first time, he felt the ground beneath his feet, sensing every step becoming a testament to his metamorphosis. They moved through the thrumming crowds, and she began pointing out the smallest things, stories behind the shop windows, expressions on the faces of strangers. Each detail peeled back layers of mundanity, teaching him to see connections in the fabric of existence. Jake realized he was no longer just observing but immersing himself. The vibrant colors of the world began to swirl with meaning. He felt buoyant, yet anchored by purpose. "I'm beginning to understand," he ventured, feeling alive in fresh connection. "What else can I do?" "Stay curious," she urged. "Ask questions. Most importantly, listen." The simple truth hit him with the force of an epiphany. The corporate world he had clung to had often suffocated the very essence of curiosity, replacing it with targets and metrics. Jake felt a sense of determination wash over him, the fear wavering into something manageable. "I can do that. I am ready to explore my truths." As they continued walking, contemplating the uncharted territories ahead, the enormity of their conversation lingered in the air. Jake saw inklings of his own potential starting to emerge from the shadows. He paused, a question forming in his mind. Can there be more than just exploration? What about making a real difference? The cleaner turned, a twinkle in her eye. Perhaps that's the next layer waiting to be uncovered. Jake felt his heartbeat quicken as he realized he had stumbled upon more than just a path. He was at the gateway of his potential, and each step forward promised deeper revelations. The realization hit him. The journey ahead would not come without its challenges, but the thrill of discovery was intoxicating. "Are you ready for that?" the cleaner asked, pausing to glean his determination. Jake inhaled deeply, the world spinning with possibilities. Every inhale drew in wisdom from the focused, ordinary lives around him. "Absolutely. I'm ready for whatever comes next." But just as hope began to blossom, an unsettling thought clouded his mind. What would happen when his pursuit of introspection led him back to confront his past? How would he reconcile the ambition that once fueled him with the authenticity he now sought? As if in answer, he saw a familiar face in the crowd, one he thought he would never see again. An old colleague from the very company he had left behind. "Are you prepared to confront it all?" he whispered to himself, heart racing. The path of authenticity awaited, but would he embrace both the new and the old that beckoned? Jake stood frozen as recognition struck him like a bolt of lightning. There, standing just a few feet away, was Harris, a former colleague whose ambitious demeanor had always been coupled with disparaging remarks about those deemed less driven. His heart raced, not from excitement, but from trepidation. The world he had meticulously navigated was crashing into the newfound reality he yearned to explore. Harris's gaze wandered across the street, finally landing on Jake. The corners of his mouth lifted into a smirk, eyes glinting with a mixture of surprise and amusement. "Well, well, look who decided to step into the light from behind that gray cubicle." "Funny seeing you here," Jake replied, forcing a nonchalant tone. Each word felt like a weight, each syllable a reminder of the life he had just begun to distance himself from. The longevity of their past friendship masked a labyrinth of judgment, competition, and ambition, the very thing he sought to leave behind. Harris shuffled closer, a hint of condescension in his tone. "You still trying to find yourself, or have you finally got a plan?" He chuckled, his voice echoing the familiar digs of years gone by. Jake's pulse quickened as he wondered if his vulnerability was on public display now. What could he say in the face of Harris's glee? "I'm exploring different paths now," he managed, the words trailing off into an uncertainty he hadn't anticipated. "Exploring? Like you had time for that when you were chasing deadlines," Harris shot back, his expression a mix of disbelief and amusement. Jake felt the defensive barrier within himself go up, but he paused, remembering the cleaner's insistence to be open. Each confrontation could serve as a catalyst, an opportunity to align his new truths with the shadows of his past. "I used to think those deadlines defined me, but I've come to realize it's the experiences we choose that shape who we really are." "You're kidding, right? This is your new philosophy?" Harris laughed, dismissing the notion with a wave. "The world doesn't change for dreamers, Jake. It rewards those who know how to play the game." A tense silence settled, thick with the air of judgment. In that moment, Jake understood. Harris represented everything he had wanted to escape. This encounter was a test, a moment demanding clarity of purpose. Did he want to retreat back into the comfort of lethal ambition or fight for something genuine? "Maybe the game is changing, Harris. Maybe it's time we reassess our metrics of success," Jake replied, the nascent confidence punctuating his voice. Harris's smirk faltered, and Jake caught the flicker of irritation crossing his face. "Interesting take, but come back when you've rooted out the dream from reality." With that, Harris moved away, leaving Jake standing amidst the bustling crowd, heart pounding, breathless with fright and exhilaration. He had stood his ground against someone who embodied the very ideals he was moving away from, and surprisingly, he felt lighter. "Are you okay?" The cleaner's voice broke through his thoughts, calm yet puzzled. I think I just took a step, Jake said, more to himself than to her. An unexpected smile crept onto his lips as he turned toward her. I faced someone who defined my past, and I didn't back down. Remarkable, she replied, an approving nod in her expression. But don't let that interaction define your journey. It's only one step. He nodded, feeling the tether to his past gradually loosening. What if I want to make a real difference, though? Confront those who operate in that environment and still stay true to myself. That's the challenge, isn't it? She mused. But you can approach it with authenticity. It's about discovering where that true power resides. You might find that in both listening and being heard, you wield a strength you never knew you had. With each word, Jake began to feel the conviction swell within him. This was not merely an exploration. This was a reclamation of identity. Each moment from here on out, each face, each challenge, was a piece of the puzzle he was learning to put together. As they continued down the crowded street, a sense of urgency surrounded him. The remnant of his past lingered like the fading echo of a siren, reminding him that he was not yet finished. "Tell me more about listening," he inquired, but as he spoke, a dark figure emerged from the corner of his eye. It was someone else from his past, someone who might evoke an even greater tension. "Are you prepared to face that again?" the cleaner asked, observing the shift in his expression. Jake took a steadying breath, heart pounding anew. "I suppose it's time to confront the real weight of who I was." The journey ahead promised revelations, yet uncertainty loomed like a storm cloud. The question lingered. Would he find his strength in those encounters, or would the past weigh too heavily to break free? As the figure approached, Jake squinted, trying to make sense of who it was before him. The shadows fell away, revealing Sarah, a former co-worker whose laughter had once echoed through the high-rise office, but now came with a charge that sent a tremor through Jake's resolve. It was not just her presence that sent unease through him. It was her piercing gaze, one that had once shared dreams and aspirations with him, now tracing the contours of his evolution. "Jake?" Her voice wavered, uncertainty creeping into her tone. "Is that really you?" In her expression, he detected a mix of curiosity and judgment, memories flooding back of the late nights spent strategizing over presentations and the hollow victories that followed. The corporate world had once swallowed him whole, her too. "Yeah, it's me," he managed, feeling vulnerability creeping in. "I've been redefining things." "Redefining? Like fleeing from our old life?" She chuckled, but there was no humor in it. It cut deeper than he thought it would, the way she called it, our. "I'm not fleeing, Sarah. I'm choosing a path that resonates with who I am," he replied, tightening his jaw, striving for a posture of confidence. "Is that what they told you?" She stepped a little closer, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "That the life you had wasn't good enough?" Jake opened his mouth to respond, but the words stalled. Had he turned his back on everything in the pursuit of authenticity? Or was he simply running away from the stark realities of failure? "I became tired of compromising," he finally said, feeling a resolve harden within. It wasn't just about the deadlines. It felt empty, like a mask that suffocated my essence. "What are you going to do? Start a revolution?" She shot back, her voice laced with sarcasm. "You think the world is just waiting for another idealistic dreamer?" A spark ignited inside him, igniting the fears he had hoped to quell. What's so wrong with wanting something more than just corporate ladders and performance metrics? His voice rose, surprising them both. Her eyes softened, scrutinizing him with an intensity that sent adrenaline coursing through Jake's veins. "Look, I'm not here to argue. I've been struggling myself. Living the corporate dream wasn't as glamorous as it appeared." Jake took a breath, sensing a shared understanding flicker between them, a bridge building from the ashes of their shared history. "Then what are you doing here?" he asked, curiosity edging into his tone. "I left too," she confessed, her bravado faltering for a moment. "I thought I could find happiness beyond those walls, but I don't know. Sometimes it feels like I just exchanged one cage for another." "Have you figured out what you want?" Jake inquired, a part of him eager to pull back the curtains on her own struggle, to see if she had navigated any clearer path. "Not entirely." She hesitated, guilt surfacing in her expression. "But maybe confronting those we thought we escaped is step one." Just as he opened his mouth to respond, the weight of expectation loomed larger than before. "Sarah, could we—" But then she cut him off, her brow furrowing. "You need to be careful. In trying to escape who we were, we risk unintentionally becoming lost." Her warning hung heavily in the air, and as Jake stood there, he felt the tangible remnants of his former life pressing in on him. Was he truly ready to confront not just his past, but also the people in it? "I want to learn from this," he said finally, the determination pooling in his core. Each interaction, the anger, the uncertainty, the realization, formed the backbone of the new path he was forging. "What are you ready to lose, Jake?" Her voice sliced through the moment, daring him to reflect deeper. Jake's mind raced, already contemplating the choices tethered to this revelation. The question resonated through every ounce of his being. He took a resolute step forward, shards of past interactions flickering through his mind. Everything, if it means moving forward in truth. Sarah studied him as if searching for the genuine essence lurking beneath the surface. "Then perhaps we can walk this path together, not as friends, but as allies. You ready for that?" The challenge sparked anew. Who would he become if he partnered with someone from his past? Jake felt the duality of fear and excitement urging him to take this leap. "Let's figure it out," he replied, the competitive spirit igniting within. Together, they began to move, the rhythm of their footsteps echoing a shared resolve. With each step they took, questions began to form in his mind. What would the future hold for him now? What truths might he yet uncover with Sarah at his side? Then, just as clarity settled, a figure from another chapter of his past stepped into view, demanding his attention and threatening to disrupt everything he had begun to define. As a figure approached, the air thickened with apprehension. Jake squinted, recognizing the confident gait of his former mentor, Victor, a man whose shadow loomed larger than life in the corporate realm. Jake had admired Victor's tenacity, yet that respect had soured over time, evaporating under the weight of the values he represented. The sudden confrontation felt like navigating a minefield littered with fragments of an all-too-familiar past. "Jake!" Victor's booming voice cut through the crowd, accentuated by a wide smile that concealed layers of expectation. "Victor," Jake replied, bracing himself for the familiar dynamic to reassert itself. Their history was a tangled web of ambition, mentorship, and an uncomfortable power imbalance. Each encounter left Jake feeling less than whole. "Nice to see you still supporting the firm from a distance," Victor continued, his gaze roaming Jake's attire as if appraising a property. "The industry misses your numbers. We've got an opening. Your old position is ripe for the picking." The temptation flicked through Jake momentarily, sliding in like oil on water, easy yet unsettling. "I've moved on," he replied, surprising himself with the steadiness of his voice. "I'm pursuing different avenues now." Victor's laughter was a low rumble, dripping with condescension. "Different avenues? By chasing dreams? Let me remind you, real success doesn't come from daydreaming. You need hard numbers, results. You'll join those who live on coffee breaks and daydreaming." Jake felt a tightness in his chest, igniting the embers of his previous self-doubt. Yet, As he glanced at Sarah, standing resolutely beside him, the reflection of his journey over the past days sparked something deeper within. A defiance he hadn't known he could summon. "The pursuit has never been solely the numbers for me, Victor," Jake countered, his voice gaining strength. "I'm learning to value experiences over profits and authenticity over illusion. That doesn't make me less ambitious. It makes me human, someone who's willing to break free from the confines of traditional success." Victor raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by Jake's newfound resolve, but the smirk on his lips only sharpened. "Don't be naive. The world doesn't reward idealism. At the end of the day, it's about what you can put on the table." "I've put enough on the table to realize that true satisfaction stems from understanding who I am and how I engage with the world," Jake replied, unwavering. The certainty embedded in his words surprised even him. "Leaving behind a toxic environment has actually opened up possibilities I never considered." "Good luck with that," Victor chuckled, that familiar sneer returning. "Don't let the dreamers define your reality. And believe me, if you want the real world to accept you, you'll have to play their game." "The world is ever evolving, Victor," Jake said, feeling invigorated. "I'm not about to become collateral in a game that never truly valued me." With that, Jake turned, fully aware that the path toward authenticity was core to this newfound identity he had begun to embrace. This moment stood not as an obstacle, but as a transformative chapter, carving boundaries between the past and present. "Jake, wait," Victor called after him, the challenge in his tone futile in the face of Jake's conviction. "Every encounter shapes us, but we decide what kind of impact it has," Jake affirmed, slowing momentarily to meet Victor's eyes. In that exchange, he recognized not only the resolve of his conviction, but the failure of an outdated mindset, a realization that would guide him forward. With Sarah beside him, he stepped away from the specter of his corporate past. "Are you ready to face more of the reality out there?" she asked, her curiosity clear. "I am," Jake declared, clarity resonating through him. "Let's discover the real journey." The two of them continued down the bustling street, devoid of the weight they used to carry. Each footfall marked a commitment to seek authenticity, understanding, and genuine human connection. A roadmap that would require vulnerability, but ultimately lead to a life full of purpose. As Jake ventured forward, a sense of urgency replaced uncertainty. No longer did he seek the accolades tied to his old life. What mattered most now was feeling alive in the present and forging real connections. He was ready to face the world, equipped with the knowledge that the past couldn't dictate the future. Looking at Sarah, Jake felt a renewed sense of hope. What awaited him was an unraveling of experiences and relationships that would redefine everything he thought he knew. "Shall we?" he asked, determination igniting his spirit. "Absolutely," Sarah replied, her smile genuine and supportive. With a new narrative ready to be written, together they took that next step into the unknown, a journey forged not in the pursuit of wealth, but in the commitment to uncover what truly mattered in life. As the city pulsed with life around them, Jake felt the thrill of liberation, his heart pounding with the promise of growth, connection, and authenticity. The real transformation was only just beginning. Now's the time to make sure you stay connected to this channel for more incredible journeys like Jake's. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these powerful narratives alive. Comment your reactions and theories about Jake's journey and the lessons learned. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this transformative story. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.